Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In our last video we started up with an introduction for scheduling with minimum lateness, and in this video we are going to start thinking about algorithms that would help us when we have jobs we want to schedule with minimum lateness. Let's start with the first algorithms. We are going to consider scheduling the shortest jobs first. We're going to consider scheduling the shortest jobs first. This certainly does make sense, but the question is, would it always work? Let's take an example. Let's look at job A. Let's say job A has length 1 and has a deadline. We discussed the notion of deadline in the last video, so if you haven't seen it, you might just want to take out a few minutes to look through it. So the deadline for job A is 100, and we have job B, which has length 20, and the deadline for job B is, let's say, 20. So how do we schedule these jobs? Let's say we start from the shortest job, which is A. We schedule A first. A is from here to here, and it's 1. And B goes, this is the end of A, right? And B goes from here to here. This is the end of B, and it's 20. So we see that the lateness of B, of course, A is not late because it has a deadline of 100, and it only goes from 0 to 1. So, and B is lined up immediately after A. So it finishes at 21. That means it has a deadline of 1. So it has a deadline of 20. That means it has a lateness. That's what I meant to say. Lateness of B is 21. That's the time at which it ended, minus the deadline, which is 1. But we see that if we had scheduled B first, which is 20, and then A, which would now end at 21, there is no lateness. None of the jobs are done past the deadline because B ends exactly at 20 and the deadline for B is 20, and A ends exactly at 21 and the deadline is 100. So there is no lateness. This goes to show that in as much as this algorithm may make sense, it will not always work. So now let's consider another algorithm. Maybe you should pause this video for a second and think about it. What other algorithm do you think we can consider for scheduling jobs with minimum lateness? Okay. Let's think about scheduling by Slack. That's the second one we'll look at. Scheduling by Slack. So let's discuss the notion of Slack. Let's say we have a job. Let's call this job A, whose length is 20, and it has a deadline of 30, right? And we have another job B, whose length is 10, and it has a deadline of 45. We can say that job A has slack of 10. So slack is the time between the length of the job and the deadline. So we have, which is deadline, the deadline minus the length. That's your slack. So we can decide to schedule by Slack. So let's try that. For A, since A has a slack of 10 and B has a slack of, in this case, 45 minus 10, that's 30. We are going to say that the job which has the least, the lesser slack is more urgent. So we can say that A is the more urgent job in this case. So let's schedule with A first. Let's say we have A, which is 20, and then B, which is 10. Does this work? Does this minimize lateness? Let's see, the deadline for A is 30, so this works. The deadline for B is 45, 20 plus 10. This works for this situation. Yeah, but let's consider another example. Let's say this other example, the length of job A is 1 and it has a deadline of 2. And the length of job B is, let's say, 4 and it has a deadline of 4. Let's think about it. Which of them do you think is more urgent? I think B is more urgent because its slack is 0. So this is the more urgent job. Okay, let's schedule this. We'll start from B, which has length of 4 and a deadline of 4. And then we schedule A, which has a length of 1, but then A ends at 5. So in as much as this works for B, for A we have a deadline of 2 and it ends at 5. So it means that our lateness of A is, let's see, that would be 5 minus 2 equals 3. How about the other way around? What if we schedule the less urgent job first? So that means let's consider scheduling A first. So this is A, it has length of 1, then this is B, it has length of 4. A with length of 1 and a deadline of 2. This is the deadline for A. Okay, so this works. How about B? B has a deadline of 4, but then it ends at 5. So we have the lateness of B. Lateness of B is 1. So what would you prefer? Lateness of 3 or lateness of 1? It all depends on the job. So this goes to show that scheduling by slack doesn't always work. I'm going to end this video at this point. I would need you to think about another algorithm. Which other algorithm do you think will work better for scheduling jobs with minimum lateness? And I'll catch up with you still on this topic in the next video. If you liked this video, please remember to subscribe and like the video, comment, and I'll see you on the next one.